I am very pleased to have with us today Debra BenAvram, CEO of the Association for the Advancement of Blood and Biotherapies. Welcome, Debra.
Thank you so much, Lucas. It's great to be here.
My pleasure. We had a great, fun chat before the show to kind of tee up our subjects and areas of opportunity, which we want to get into. But why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself, Debra, your path in associations, what brought you here, and what's kept you around?
Absolutely. Well, that's 8 questions in one there, Lucas.
I gave you a lot of content, so I can kick back for a second.
That's fair. That's fair. Well, I've been in the association space for 23 years and counting. I fell into this field like maybe most people. I left graduate school where, for an odd reason, I ended up studying and falling in love with organizational culture and leadership theory, which is not something most people go to graduate school for. Neither did I, but that's what I ended up studying.
That's okay.
And I just basically found a job. I needed a job. And back in those days, we used the newspaper, and I found a job in the newspaper at an association. And I'd never heard of an association before, like so many of us. But as soon as I started, I fell in love with it. And that's been my whole career, has been actually in healthcare associations in particular. What I love about it, what keeps me here, I like to solve problems, and I like to help people have that feeling when they've helped someone solve a problem or when their problem is solved. So what associations do is bring lots of different people together with diverse perspectives to solve problems and make the world a better place. And I think we give people the dopamine hits along the way when we do that.
Absolutely.
So that keeps me going. And I think that associations are this very unique business model in the world of businesses. And we support individuals and businesses to do their very best while we do our very best. And we're mission driven. So that gets us all up in the morning. So that's probably every reason under the sun of why I love what I do. But I truly do. I love being an association professional.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know you started in associations. You have, I would say, a little context for outside of associations, but that's great. But you've stayed. There's enough of an attraction there. The mission from the executives that I've spoken with is a common theme. I like that. There's probably tons of little reasons. And you've worked with small associations and large associations. Do you have a preference? You're in a larger association now, correct? I think you said you have a good sized staff.
Yes. We have about 70 people here at AABB. I don't know that I have a preference. I think they're all really different. What I love about having a larger staff is that we can amplify our impact. We have, more diversity, more skills, more ability to really keep our ear to the ground and listen to what our members and customers need. The challenge for that for me as a CEO is it's harder and harder to know each person and really be connected with each member of the staff, which I really like to be as a people-driven leader. So every association type and size has its pros and cons, and I think we just use the strengths that each one has. I find it fun no matter where we are.
Yeah. Well, you're big on culture and organizational leadership, and a lot of those things tie in. And you had shared you're currently in the office, but not a lot of your staff, if I can use that loosely, are currently in the office. And so how do you start to make that connection? And again, how do you get to know people, and how do you keep it congruent, but also allow people to do what they do independently?
In terms of getting to know people, I think one of the things I think out of COVID, we all talk about how hard it is now that we're remote. And frankly, it was hard before. It was hard when we were in the office. It was just different. And so being mostly remote, which our team is mostly remote, it just makes us think harder and more creatively about the ways we're going to engage with each other and connect. So some of the things as an organization that we're doing is bringing people together periodically. We have 2 all-team retreats once a year in person in the office. Those have been really transformative for people to meet, to connect. We try to have all of the things that everyone probably is doing, our online staff meetings, our Teams threads on what recipes, we're loving.
Oh, there you go.
And yeah,
I'll join that one.
I will add you to the thread, Lucas, and
Perfect.
I'm a very good cook, so you're going to be really happy about that. Yeah, I think that we're all whole people, and I think that COVID taught us that the dogs are coming in and out of the screen, and the kids are, because we're all whole people, and so we've almost been able to embrace that and let people see more of who we are. I try to do that. You mentioned I was in the office. I try to do that by telling people why I need to come to the office. For me, I don't work well at home. I have a lot going on in the house, and it's really difficult for me to be productive. And for my team members, if they want to be here, great. If they want to be in their house or at Starbucks, wherever they can be most productive is where they should do the bulk of their work.
Yeah.
I think if people are adults, we can give them the freedom to do that.
I agree. And everybody handles that situation differently. Those that maybe are more, as an example, those are more extroverted, need the connection. And maybe that's what they miss about the in-office. But there's
Right.
also there's a flip side to that. And then those that enjoy being more work independent driven, not so people independent, that need for that social interaction, they found maybe this just like boost of efficiency and work quality for them. And you have to sort of understand individually. And again, as you said, that gets harder the bigger the staff becomes, but playing to the personalities, if you will, or not playing to, but working with the personalities of the individual staff is important to make sure that everybody's in a good place.
Absolutely. And I think it drives us to be much more purpose driven in how we use our time. So when we come together, what do we want to use that time for that is the best thing we could be doing when we're in person? I don't need to be in person with me in my office and someone down the hall, both on Zooms all day. We can be, but that's not the best use of our time together. So when we're together, what kind of planning are we doing? What mapping are we doing for the year ahead? And what are those just conversations that we need to have deep dives on so that we're all aligned when we're together, we're hunkering down. And then when we go back to wherever it is we work best independently, we can execute hopefully really effectively based on the time that we treasure together.
Let me ask you, you mentioned the twice a year, which we do the same thing. We call mid-year strategic planning. Everybody gets together here in the DC area, and then we do, near the office in Falls Church. And then we do an annual strategic planning, typically in the fall. And we've always done that down in Old Town because I think it's just fun it's an easy place to hop around, and there's restaurants and things when we get out of the strategic planning. But what is your intent or on the mix of, hey, let's really work on the business and then let's work on the relationships? Are you intentional with that mix? Do you have like a 70-30? Do you go into that? Or if I pressed you to put a number on it, what would it look like?
I think it's been a retreat by retreat trial, right? We're trying to figure out the right mix of doing the work when we're together and building relationships. And those can happen at the same time, but it has been it's been so difficult throughout COVID just to get to know people and think about how many, I don't know for you, how many new staff you've onboarded. And that time is really precious. So in a day and a half or 2-day retreat, can we really do both get to know each other and the real work, the digging in work of strategy development? Or is it more of a broad brush alignment, which is where I think we tend to use that all staff? You have 70 people in a room. What is the best use of time for that? To me, it has been connecting, learning about one another, creating trust, finding ways to live our values, so that when we do that strategy work around, I like to use strategic priorities more than a formal plan so we can be more flexible. But when we're doing that work, if we don't have trust, if we don't all buy into the organizational values, you can have all the time in the world, you won't have an effective strategy and certainly not accountability to execute that.
I think the ability to build trust in this sort of 2D environment here over the screen, that's very difficult. And I think there's an upper limit to that, which is why we implemented the getting together in person, because it's just different to sit across from somebody and break some bread and have some conversation and talk. We share a lot, our teams over Zoom or Teams or whatever platform it is.
Yeah.
But that level of trust, as you said, and also the difficult conversations, which we tend to press into during those times as well. There's just some of those that aren't fruitful in a 2D environment. You can only, sometimes we even catch ourselves specifically going, we need to pause this conversation because this is a 3D conversation, not a 2D conversation.
I think that's so smart. And I love empowering a team with that tool to say, we need to have this in person. So many of our team members tend to work with the same people all the time. Frankly, whether you're in a team of 10 or a team of 70, there's a core of people you work with. They might be in your department, they might not. That retreat environment, whatever you call it, that we even assign seats, which seems very kindergarten-like, I know. But we're very intentional about creating a mix of teams and team members, I should say, at each table. So we typically see people in pods and, tables of 6, let's say, and mixing it up. So each day when you come in, you're going to be at a different pod. People know to look at the chart, like a wedding, you're looking at the seating chart. It's really about making sure that you not only are just interacting with people, but we're doing exercises at those tables that let you see and learn, there's strengths, this person on another team has strengths I didn't even know, or here's a window into the thing I'm struggling with that, I can't get my numbers, I can't get registration numbers for this, and this person has nothing to do with that activity. They have sometimes the best ideas, and you didn't think about that because you're going through your team's Microsoft Teams motion of who you're going to meet with. So widening the aperture of who your team really is goes so much further than your defined department. And I think those retreats give the opportunity for us to be intentional about creating the expansion of what we mean by team.
And whether it was part of the thought or not, I share with you pre-show, my wife is a self-claimed introvert. She knows it very well. And so if I empathize with that group just for a second, I often do, but if just for a second on this, it also gives those who are maybe have some anxiety around the in-person, who haven't been there in a while, hey, I don't have to think about who I'm sitting next to, right? Like it can decompress an issue. I don't have to, it's one less thing that's on my mind, who I'm going to sit next to. How do I find a seat? What if I get there last? So I like that for a lot of levels now.
I love that. I actually didn't think about that at all, but it's so true. Everyone we work on a different mix of activities. Of course, we all do that in our retreats, but I love that. I can't wait to tell my team that we had a hidden rationale in what we're doing. A hidden why is really powerful. Thanks for sharing that.
Well, maybe you just did. I don't know. Depending how many of your colleagues listen to the show. So I also want to bring it. So I think this is related to those meetings and having those conversation. You're a self-described silo smasher. Did I get that right? And on your LinkedIn, it says under skills, silo eliminator, which is the first time I'd ever seen that, but I love it. I can relate with it. Tell us more about why the passion around breaking down silos and where that started. Is there an origin story? Did you always have this?
Did I always have this? I wish there was an origin story of a day when I had trouble with a silo and put on a superhero outfit that I'll design one day and physically smash a silo. But honestly, I think we all struggle as professionals with silos. We don't always see them. But when we talk about the barriers to our success and what we didn't, when we hear ourselves or our team members say, I didn't even know that was happening. And I wasted all my time doing this other project because I didn't know you were doing, a similar thing. All those things, those are silos, whether we call them that or we see them or not. And they just really make me crazy. I think that the best work in associations, or maybe in any business, happens in what I call the space between it, which is the intersection of the teams and of the people. When you break down the silo and you figure out where those connection points are between your work and my work, that's the magic, right? That space between is where the magic happens, because despite what sometimes we describe to our members as our pillars of public policy and education,
right,
none of those teams can be successful without all the other teams. Education can't sell meeting registrations without marketing and without, the customer servicing, all those teams. So when we're overt in talking and articulating all that goes into that space between, which frankly is actually just the space. It's not the space between. It is where it happens. We talk about that, then we smash silos. So I am known, for better or worse, in meetings, when I hear siloed language, I will call it out. Words matter. And when I hear people saying things like, well, that's, that I don't want to step on toes. That's not my it's not really my place to say. It is not only your place, it is your responsibility, because you're here to lead no matter what your role is. And the organization's success is everyone's responsibility. So no silos, smash.
That's great. Smash. I like that, you self-corrected pretty quickly the space between to like, there really isn't a space between, right? Because everybody needs to be connected to some other department, somebody else, because if you break that and there is space between, suddenly you feel like, how am I part of this mothership that is the mission, right? And so the ultimate accelerator is when everybody understands their role within the mothership, shooting the mission, if I'm just going to lean into the mothership metaphor for a second. But
I love it. And when we think about it that way, we can use what we would think of as like a break in that space as learning opportunities. So instead of resisting them, they happen. Silos pop up every day, and they can be big. They can be made of bricks or whatever motherships are made out of. I don't know. But when we talk about them and we say, we had a miss here because we didn't connect. We have a miss here because we didn't talk about with clarity who was picking up that ball and how we were connected. We embrace it as something that's going to happen, and we can learn from it. We can even further ingrain the idea that silos are not a part of the way our organization's DNA is going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And so in that, we talked briefly again about this balance of, hey, everybody needs to understand the greater picture, the greater mission, how everything's tied in. But I'm a strong believer also that there's power in focus. So is it a balance, or is it because those two things can coexist?
So I think that it's a great question, because for someone of my style, it's wonderful to have everybody all together and, any idea can come and we'll find a space for it. But the reality is that you're quite right. Staff, our teams, our volunteers, they need to understand what we're asking of them. So it's not about doing everything all day together and holding hands and making sure that we're, co-writing everything. But it is about that alignment and making sure that we're connected and we're in lockstep. So one of the ways that I think we've been able to improve in that area is using the tool called OKRs, or Objectives and Key Results, which is something a lot of tech companies use. Google uses it. No pretending to claim to be an expert on it. We actually launched that, sort of a quarterly goal setting model, essentially. There are many different such models. Our last meeting physically in the office was our sort of intro to OKRs. We had an outside person come. I remember sitting there thinking, who's coughing? Like, should we be in this room? Probably not. And we'll see
either the best time or the worst time. I'm not sure.
That's so true. We thought we'd be back in 3 weeks, right? Remember those days? But that wasn't true. It was the best decision. I think we ended up making the progress we made during the pandemic thanks to having that model, because it let us be aligned at a time when silos had no place. I mean, if you're a siloed organization during COVID, it would be really difficult to stay in lockstep. And we had a lot of work to do. The field of blood and blood transfusion was in really a big predicament when people couldn't leave their homes to donate blood.
Right.
So, it was a time when we were fortunate to have rolled out that tool, and we keep building on it. One of the things I love about that tool is that it's about transparency. So everyone in the whole organization, no matter what your role is, no matter which goals you might be a part of, everyone has access to the system. Everyone can see the progress. And we're really working on building that as a way to hopefully continue to reduce our silos, which again, spring up, we got to smash them down.
There you go. So as an example for others who may be listening / watching, like, tell us a little bit more, like, how do you determine those OKRs? Everybody has them. You said everybody can see them. Are they on a project management board somewhere? I mean, that's a little in the weeds, but I think that's curious to just take the next step. You've also found it to be really successful for your organization.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I'll try to, so much to it. But I'll answer your last question first. We do use a tool. It's called Quantive. It's an online OKR platform. And it ties in with other tools, integrates with Teams and so forth. Monday.com, can integrate with your project tools. So it's not task and project management. It's really about how do we measure our progress? How do we measure what matters? Which I did not come up with that phrase. That's really sort of the founder of OKRs. What we do each year is we develop our organizational level key results, and they follow this board's strategic priorities of the organization. What are we trying to get to this year? And each one of those is going to be measurable. And each of those organizational results, for example, we are trying to grow our Biotherapies portfolio, and there'll be an organizational priority around that, or financial health, or employee engagement, which is a big, important area for us this year. So we have 5, and then each one of those has 3 key results. And a key result, for example, with employee engagement might be, X% increase in the employee engagement survey for the year. This is the annual. And then each quarter, we're breaking that up into the work. But I'm not doing that. The team is doing that. So I'm a part of setting the organizational level goals.
Yep.
And then there's a team of staff across the organization at all levels, a small team for each of those that's working on, okay, what do we really need to do? What's the work we need to do? And what are the key results associated with that work that are going to tell us that we're making progress? And those teams meet. Those teams have their own teams that are executing on that work. And it's a great way of sort of chunking down the progress that we need to make. And you could use a big operational plan. You could use 100 different models. This is the one we found that really has worked very well for us.
And so if I'm on your team, I set my own OKRs, I set my own metrics, and then you kind of challenge and work through whether Lucas is, off this planet and that's not achievable versus, he's sandbagging. I think we could do 50% more.
So, no, actually, the OKRs are not individuals. They're not owned by an individual. They're championed by an individual. So they're really team OKRs. So they're not your individual goals for the year, although someone will have primary responsibility. And one of the things I love about OKRs, maybe you'll be shocked by this, probably not, is that we use something called Moonshots. And so it is appropriate, Lucas, for you to tell me you are going to get 2,000 registrants for a new meeting, even if what you really think you're going to get is 1,500. And we have an agreement that you put in a moonshot. 2,000 is a moonshot, and we know you might not hit it. But if you put down 1,500, you might get 1,000. So we want you to put down a moonshot, and the whole team knows that some of the key results that we have are really big stretches. And a part of the model is that it is okay not to get to it, but we're going to push ourselves. That's hard.
Yeah. That's good. I like the pushing. That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
You're the silo smasher. And now that I've learned a new phrase, moonshot, I'm probably like moonshot master. Like I'm like, yep, everybody just shoot for the moon. Come on, let's go.
Oh, we're going to have our superhero poster, you and me. Silo
Okay. I'm ready.
smasher, moonshot master. It's good. It's good. We're like the Justice League.
There you go. Well, we need a new name, but
Okay. All right.
we'll come up with something that won't get us in court when we start advertising. But yeah, the challenge for me then is like leaving the space between the moonshot and, hey, what's a reasonable expectation? Like, hey, Lucas, come back down to earth. Like 1,500 is really the number. Like we're going for 2,000 and let's go all in, burn the boats and go for the 2,000. And then at the end of the quarter, year, whatever it is, like we have to deal with what's reality and where we are. Like,
So I think that's a way to look at it. That's a lens on it. I think that's where you budget conservatively, and then and that way you can really empower your team to emotionally invest in the moonshots. Because if you put down a moonshot that you tell yourself is not reality, you have not put down a moonshot. You have put down a fake number that's higher than the real number. And those aren't the same thing. A moonshot is what you're striving for, understanding that you are not going to be moved on out of the organization for not hitting that number. We're going to learn from it, but we're going to push towards it. The sort of fail safe, the guardrail on the back end is not overcommitting in the budget so that we don't damage the organization's financial stability. And we have to be careful not to have too many moonshots. We have to pick the right ones. But don't trick yourself into putting a fake number down and telling yourself it's a fake number, because you won't strive for the moonshot if you do that.
When you do that, or I do that, I've occasionally like, okay, let's just throw it out there. And sometimes I do for the effect or the exercise of, okay, doubling, tripling revenue is like maybe not attainable right in a 12-month period. But if it were, what would we have to do it?
Exactly.
Right. I think it's an interesting conversation. How would it forces change within the organization so that we're not always doing the same thing, thinking the same way, even if we then have to back it down to, okay, maybe some of these things we proposed are a little outlandish in this period of time. But
I think that's fair. And maybe we could think of it as setting a floor, and the floor is what has to be met. And then we think that the ceiling has, there's no ceiling. So, how far can we go? And we write that down, with the moonshot. It is a mindset. I think it is hard for teams to get comfortable culturally with putting something down and really trusting that they're not going to get dinged for not hitting that number. That takes a lot of time and trust in each other.
It does. And communication, open communication, because nobody wants to be surprised. I like the floor and the ceiling metaphor. I would change it in my organization to say the floor is where we are or what we did last year.
Okay.
And then the ceiling is what we're going to do next year. And then blow the roof off and show me the moon so I can shoot at it. But
even better.
That's just a different way to frame sort of the same idea.
I love it.
We talked a little bit also about organizational structure, right? And how big of a fan you are of org charts and titles and all this. And again, for those that don't see us, we're chuckling because that is sarcasm. If you haven't listened to me enough, that's it. That was it. You missed it. But tell us a little bit more about how you look at your org charts. And, there's horizontal, there's vertical, there's sideways, twisted, and you've had some interesting ones. So.
Yeah. Well, I like to jokingly say that I'm fairly allergic to box and line org charts. I will not do them. I do not want to see them from my HR team. And why does that bother me? Because sort of visually, to see someone's name or title in a box with a line around it, with a line drawn to someone else, tells me something, because everything we do, everything we say, everything we present sends messages. So for me, the message that sends is, here's your box. I'm asking you to stay in it. And here's the little, train tracks that you get to take to another person. Now, I understand that's really overkill on what's meant by traditional org charts, but that's how I see it.
It's a sideways silo if you think about it, right?
That's exactly right. Or even better, let's put a dotted line because that'll mean something, extra special. So
right.
It's not my way. And I think that org charts are one of the first things that staff or prospective staff see. And so they're an opportunity to say right from the first meeting, right from the initial interaction, this place is going to have a different experience, a different culture, a different set of expectations of you than what you've seen before. And how do you know that? This looks like you do not understand what this picture is, so ask about it. So I like to get creative with, and I like to put a lot of meaning into the actual drawing. So for example, at my last organization, we used a circle that was actually comprised of not one line, shockingly, of sort of ribbons that were all intertwined. And you'll be even less shocked to know that I didn't want any defining line around the outside of any of the ribbons. I needed them to blur into each other to create that space between.
I'm a visual. I need to see this, but I'm kind of getting the picture, and it's very Debra. I like it.
So anybody who's listening, who's interested, I'm happy to share it with you. That was such a conversation starter at that organization when we talked to people, and now I have a bigger team here, and we're looking at, and we have a different, it's not a circle, but it's yet another way of representing. And one of the ways that I do that is it's really simple. It's kind of a Venn diagram, except without the hard lines between, in the middle. But we have 4 major functional areas of the organization, and they're represented in that way. Again, conversation starter. Let's me talk about that space, that magic space. Maybe more importantly than that, the expectations. What does it look like to work successfully in an organization where silo smashing is the expectation, the responsibility?
Yeah. So first, please tell me that diagram is in the shape of a blood droplet, because that would be amazing. If not, then you should make it.
But maybe it could be in a week now that you gave me that idea. So
there we go.
I'm on it.
Well, you've inspired me now. You're talking, I'm thinking what is this, traditional sort of pyramid silo? It is a silo, right? By nature. When you draw these lines, kind of gross. I kind of want to throw up a little bit in my mouth. This idea, we create this ball or whatever the shape might be, that it is intertwined. I like the blurring. Yes, this may not be everything that you do. It might not fall into this box or in this paragraph, because what you do impacts, as we said, other things and into the greater mission. Right. So if the representation of the traditional org chart now suddenly doesn't make sense to me, you have me thinking, and I'm going to try to stay focused for the rest of the show. But the back of my mind, I'm going to tell you, I'm already thinking about this.
I'm so glad. There are a few things that are sort of my personal missions in life. This is one of them, is to get people to think differently about how the tools we use to represent the values we have. We have so many tools at our disposal, and an org chart for me is one of those tools. So I'm excited to see what you come up with from that, Lucas. Let me know.
Well, our strategic planning annual is coming up in a couple of, I was going to say weeks. I think it's a couple of months from now. But yeah, I'll record. I'll do a big unveiling to all the staff, and you'll see all the visceral reactions. What is that? And then I'll spend the next 45 minutes with our outside consultant trying to explain that, but I'm excited already.
Maybe involve your staff in the process so they get to be a part of your brain instead of a big reveal. Just a thought.
Then you miss out on all the shock and awe. That's good, right? No.
Yeah.
I think your way is, you're thinking right. If you involve everybody, that's the right way to do it. I'm half joking. So switching gears, I like to ask this question of association executives, each year, what is the one, maybe 2 things that you really look forward to? What are those things at the beginning of the year or start of the fiscal, whatever it is, you're already looking ahead maybe 9 months to this, and it kind of gets you up and gets you excited about going in and fighting the mission?
Yeah, it's such a great question. And, the first thing that came to mind when you asked that was, I think I would have answered this very differently pre-COVID. Actually, AABB has not been able to hold an annual meeting since 2019. So, because unfortunately last year when we were supposed to have our annual meeting, it overlapped with the unfortunate hurricane that hit Florida. So I myself have only attended 2 AABB annual meetings, but certainly, pre-COVID, I feel like that would have been the thing. During COVID, I'm beyond now. I think that we've learned to find other ways of feeling that connection. It's not the same. But what am I most looking forward to? It is connections with people who are impactful and who are excited to be a part of our community. So I could give you, a list of a million of those, but what I've learned through COVID is it doesn't have to only happen in one big time a year. I love to go visit my members and customers at AABB. I was just at one of our blood donor centers last week, donated blood while I was there and had an incredible experience. That's so impactful. Our staff retreats and my own opportunity every year that I look forward to is being with my own peers, association executives and other business leaders in the DC area so I can grow my own toolbox and bring that back to AABB. So connections with people is really the answer. You probably wanted something, very specific, but that's really what it's all about.
It's wide open. And those that know you that hear that probably are going, of course. And those that just met you realize what an introvert you are. Again, insert sarcasm. So I think that's fantastic. I can share that sentiment as well. Before COVID, in office type of environments, I really liked. I like interacting with the people. Now, for me, the interactions in persons are amplified. Like I enjoy this sort of 2D environment, talking with people and getting to know each other. But if given the chance, I'm like, you know what, let's meet for coffee. And if you're in the DC area, let's go to lunch. And I'm planning now for strategic plannings, both year and mid-year, because I really look forward to that. And, in sort of a relationship sense, there's these great times that you can sort of live off of, fill your battery and just kind of eat off of for in some cases months. And in my case, I hope it's at least 6 because we only do it twice a year. But that's for me, it's very similar.
So true. Love it.
Well, Debra, we have so many things we could talk about. We've already talked about a second episode. Maybe we'll do that and record some other stuff and play our pranks on our producers. And like we had talked about, sorry, Casey, but we didn't do it this time. But I will wrap us up at the end of every episode, as I know, because you said you've watched, which is great. We ask you, is there somebody you think that our audience would benefit from hearing from?
Absolutely. And I love the model of this because it really brings forward all kinds of different people. I would love for you to record an episode with Matthew Duva, who is the CEO of the American Association for the Study of Liver Diseases. Back when I first became a CEO at my last organization, I was 30-year-old. Brand new CEO, and what is now 15 plus years ago, not to give my age, although obviously I just did.
Nobody's doing the math. It's fine. Moving on, people.
Right. It's okay. Yeah. I'm proud. At that time, there were very few young CEOs. It's getting a little more common. And a few of us got together at an ASAE meeting and formed a really tight cohort. And that's where I met Matthew, who has since that day been one of my closest confidants and colleagues who I learn from all the time. And I think you'll have a great episode with him.
That's great. I'm looking forward to Matthew already. If you're speaking highly of him, I know he's a quality individual, quality human, and we'll learn some things. And so will folks on our show. So thank you for that. And thank you so much for the time, Debra.
Thanks so much for having me. It was really a pleasure. Thanks, Lucas.